Hello everyone, I'm Brian, and welcome back. Let's go ahead and continue.
Happiness cannot really be achieved through the material world. It's essentially a spiritual thing, getting that happiness in that place.
Oh, wonderful to hear that. Happiness is not a material thing. And to be really happy, you should do good for others. And that leads to this Swami Vivekananda saying that worship Jiva and Siva. Jiv Seva is service to mankind, is service to God. How is that coming from, again, the spiritual humanism idea, Sitaben?
Yes, of course. I mean, in a seemingly sort of materialistic way of life, which means, going out there, earning a job, paying your mortgage, having a car, and all of that, you think, oh, that's a very materialistic way of living. But there is a way that you can practice spirituality at the heart of this very materialistic way of living, because the way you do that is by putting the needs of others before your own. And a lot of people do that very naturally. They think of their children before they think of their needs. They think of their elderly before they think of their needs. So that's essentially practicing spirituality in your day-to-day life. It's very important to put the needs of others before our own, and that's what we learn in the Grihastha ashram, the system of Hinduism, that as a householder, for example, you fulfill, all sorts of aims and objectives, material objectives, but you also can lead an incredibly spiritual life in the midst of a materialistic, so-called materialistic life. And that's where you derive the greatest happiness. When you see, that reminds me of another example that we've often used is, suppose you tell a child for your birthday, you can either have, this massive cake to yourself, and you can eat as much of that cake as you want, or you have the chance to share that massive cake with your friends. Which would give you the greatest happiness? And obviously, a child may be tempted to go for having the cake by themselves, but ultimately they'll find that the greatest happiness comes from sharing that cake with others, seeing the happy grins on the other children's faces. That's where you derive the happiness of life, essentially. And that's essentially spirituality. That's spirit shining out through those eyes, as Dad always says. So yeah, sharing and caring for others is essentially spiritual living. Vijay Bhai?
No, I agree. I mean, that the term that we have, spiritual humanism, and what Swami Vivekananda is talking about, like only those who live for others are truly alive. The rest are, walking dead. Makes a lot of sense, because ultimately, if you believe in the idea of this divine spirit, and the spirit is universal, then it just makes sense to serve the spirit in others. So it should come as naturally to us. And of course, if we are truly divine spiritual beings, then that will give us a lot of happiness. It just flows naturally from who we are. As a matter of fact, that's another proof that actually the spirit is bigger than matter, because it gives us more satisfaction. Yeah, so I think absolutely true. Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, again, I'm glad this is kind of said between them two as well, because Swami Sarvarpiyananda referenced a scientific study asking people what gives them the most happiness. The first one, that's a very short burst of happiness, is buying new things for yourself. Next is having a purpose in life. Working a job, even though it's not something that you like per se, so long as it's not terrible, it'll give you a little bit of happiness because you're doing something. You're not just sitting rotting away in the house or something like that. And the third thing is serving others. And mind you, serving others doesn't mean being a slave or anything like that. It's more along the lines doing something for others that you want to do and it makes them happy. Like exactly what they're saying. That gives you the long-term happiness. Then Swami Sarvarpiyananda says the fourth ultimate happiness is looking inward, spirituality or realization, or for me, it's contentment. Being content with life, whether you're alone or whether there's things around you, just being content with the things or the way the situation is around you. That's me personally.
That's a wonderful answer, Vijay Bhai. So this leads to next question. How does spiritual humanism, this idea of worshipping Jiva and Seva, relate to Dvaita philosophy, which essentially thinks that human beings and God is two separate entities and they can never be one?
So, yeah, valid point. I mean, To be honest, when you look very closely to the Dvaita and Advaita, it looks very different from layman's terms. But ultimately, when I ask somebody who is a Dvaita believer, who believes in God as man and separate, they will say the same thing. We should serve all life on earth. We should serve all humanity because they're the creation of God, and as such, they are special. We should serve them. But one important thing to keep in mind, even the people who are Dvait, people who say, I will go to Gokul Dham or Akshar Dham, or I go to Indralok. Ultimately, even when they're in that state, they're continuously fixed on the divine God. It's not a place where you go and enjoy, material things like a big house or a palace. It's not like that. Even in that sense, you're so close to God, you're always fixed on God. Whereas Dvait says, actually, you are God. So ultimately, if you look very carefully, there's not much difference. It's difference very superficial in how you approach God, because it is not a place. Once I actually asked my mother as well. So when I go to Akshardham, which is in the Swami tradition, what happens? Do I go and do bhajans every day, and do I have a big house and live a happy person? No, you'll be always be in a state of mind where nothing apart from God comes in your head. You're fixed on God for eternity, and that gives the ultimate pleasure. So if I'm almost fixed on God and I'm merged into God, what's the difference? I don't think there's much difference here. So ultimately, I think they're the same thing. So yeah, Sita, Ben.
Yeah, no, I think you covered it amazingly. I mean, that's the thing, is essentially the conclusion of Dvait is recognizing that you are not separate from the object of your devotion. You are essentially, you merge with that divine in that way. So essentially, they lead to the same destination. And we've seen, I've mentioned previously that example of Hanuman. There's that image of Hanuman who opens his chest, and there's a picture of Ram inside. So he was, the most sort of ardent devotee of Ram, and he found that when, in his heart there was Ram there already. So once your love is that sort of, complete and full, you realize that there is no sort of distinction between you and the object of your love and devotion. And that's essentially what Advait is all about, recognizing that you are the spirit. Whereas, from the Dvait perspective, you kind of have this sort of relationship that you build, and you become closer and closer to that image of God, and until you can no longer see yourself as separate to that image of God. And that's a beautiful thing.
Wonderful stuff, Sita Ben. So this leads us to this next question, which we were unable to take last week, but we were talking about philosophies and Dvaita and Advaita. And someone asked, what are some other Indian philosophies that are as complex as Kashmir Seivism? Vijay Bhai, do you want to go on that one?
Yeah, Kashmir Seivism we know is incredibly complex because Kashmir, by the way, the Sharda Pit, one of the ancient universities there, they produce huge amount of scholars. I think there is one, I forgot the name now of a scholar. He's written about 30,000 verses on Shiva alone. It's immensely complex stuff. But Hinduism, India has been such a nation of prolific, writers and prolific, seekers of spiritualism. So the Agama literature in South India is immensely vast. The Vedanta philosophies, we have Ramanuja, Shankara, and the commentaries they've done, vast commentaries on all these scriptures, they are quite vast. So in essence, also the search for the truth have been produced immensely complex, literature, complex ideas. But ultimately, it can all be simplified in one term, is to achieve moksha and find out who you truly are. But it's part of Indic traditions, because we're very, very big, prolific writers. We've done tons and tons of stuff. Some are good, some are not good, some are very good. So we have vast library of collection of stuff. So yeah, I guess why Kashmir Seivism is immensely complex because of the deep scholars there, deep thinkers. You can say the same for something like Tamil Nadu. The Agama literature is also very vast. So I guess there are quite a few examples like that, not just Kashmir Seivism. Sita Ben?
Yeah, no, there's not much more I can add. There's a whole array of different philosophies and schools of thought, and I think that's just the beauty of Hinduism, is that it's a democracy, and you can choose however complex the one that you want. You can choose the however simplest one that you want, whichever one suits you and your temperament is the best one for you.
Wonderful. So we got a nice comment from Matrix. Is saying, it's amazing that this channel is still going strong after Lakhani sir. Thank you for keeping this going. Thank you. We are committed to keep it going, and we hope we continue to keep growing as well. He's asking this question: if Brahman is everything, how can we relate to him? Is Brahman a living being? Does it or him care about humans? Sitaben?
So this is the thing. The idea of Brahman is it's a principle. So it's not, a person. Although a lot of people find it very, very difficult to relate to something which is so impersonal. So especially in Hinduism, we're very good at impersonalizing this sort of vast, infinite spirit into gods with form, and we've got so many hundreds of thousands of different forms of gods and goddesses, which allows us to sort of polarize our understanding of spirituality and focus all of our energies in building a relationship with that form of God, because we're so used to building human relationships with our family and our friends. We sort of transpose that onto this idea of God through Ram or whoever it is, Shiva or whoever it is. So for many, that is the right way for them. But I think the world is changing dramatically, and there are a lot of people out there who do not think that that's the right way for them. And in a way, they need to sort of see a more sort of broader vision of spirituality, and that's actually what ancient Hindu philosophy is all about. That's how the whole sort of journey started, is through this principle-based understanding of reality, of spirituality, because the underpinning to everything is essentially divine. That's what we have discovered through this amazing journey of introspection, and this vast principle. There's no sort of baggage which comes with it, because if you think, oh, does this Brahman care about me or not, or whatever, it's not a person, it's just a principle, like a law of nature. So it's not partial or impartial. This is just the way the cookie crumbles. And when you think of a God with form, there comes a tremendous amount of baggage, and it actually pushes a lot of people away from religion, because you think of God in a personalized way, which is beautiful and lovely, but for those who challenge it, they say, well, what an unjust, cruel, horrific world that this personal God has created. All the tremendous amount of suffering throughout the entire living kingdom. How can an all-loving, all-compassionate, all-powerful God allow for this? It's a tremendous injustice. Either your God is incredibly cruel, or she is not as powerful as you make them out to be. So this is the wonderful thing, is this principle-oriented approach is much more philosophically sound, because all of those questions are wiped away. This is just saying, this is the unity behind the diversity. This is how the cookie crumbles. And the whole aim of our life is to recognize that we need to come out of our tiny mind-body framework and recognize that we are that. That's all there is to life. The tremendous amount of suffering and all of that will disappear once you recognize that identity with the spirit. So principle-oriented is much more philosophically sound than a personal God in that sense. Vijay Bhai?
Oh, that's interesting. How there are, I guess, in some sense, the way she's defining Brahman. Principle philosophy. Again, the way I understood Brahman, there's multiple ways to understand it, of course. I understand to some degree Advaita Vedanta. It is literally, from what Swami Sarvapriyananda has said, that it is object not limited by object, it's space not limited by space, and time not limited by time. It is the infinite. It's very hard to describe, I suppose. And essentially it is existence. So if it exists, then it is Brahman. If it doesn't exist, then it's not Brahman. Of course, again, it's not to say that it's limited. It's just it's a way to understand it. We, I guess, as humans, don't understand infinite very well, and because there's nothing in this universe that's infinite, or at the very least, nothing in our experience that's infinite. There are things out there that we may think is infinite, but it's not. So infinite is very hard to comprehend, I'm sure. I never try to comprehend infinity, so... Anyways. And then she's talking about how personalized God, about God all-powerful, why is God cruel and all that? If I were to believe in a God, that would make a lot of sense to me. It'd be, maybe God is all-powerful and everything. Let's just say that. God created the world. or the universe, whatever you want to say. But God also, how do I say, allows things to happen. Why? Because of the decisions that we make. So this is the one thing that I kind of appreciate that some people have said when I ask about why God do this and this and that. It's the fact that God gave us free will to make choices. Actually, what story was that? I don't know who said it. I don't know if Swami Sarvarpiyananda or Sadhguru talked about Shiva and Vishnu. Can't remember. They saw Shiva got upset at Brahman because he said, "How could you be so cruel? How can you let all these people suffer so much?" And I believe, if I remember correctly, I think Shiva cut off one of the heads. And then Brahman schooled Shiva, at least if I remember the story correctly, saying that I did not create the suffering. They have free will of choice to do what they wish, and this is what they chose. And then I think it was Shiva that learned that lesson about, that they have the choice to make their life however they choose. And Brahman is not the one that's or Brahma, sorry, I believe it's Brahma. Let me know if I'm wrong in the comments, please. And Brahma said that I did not intend to have them suffering. I don't intend them to have them. It says I'm making my words up here. They choose whether to be happy or not. I am not forcing them to be happy. I'm not forcing them to be sad or suffer or anything like that. It is their choice. They make it. That's that. But Shiva, which I'm genuinely amazed, I think it was Sadhguru that said this, that didn't quite understand that. But then again, I get it too. It's like, you are all-powerful God. Why would you allow suffering to happen in Earth or in this universe? But that's why I like that story. It's the fact that, God does not allow suffering to happen, but doesn't deny it from happening. It is up to us and our choices whether we suffer or not. And I will say, if there was a God out there, I would like it to be that way. That God is not cruel, but allowing us to choose our life path and not interfering with it by saying, "Oh, happiness, 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 happiness," and sadness. Nothing like that. Just let life happens and let it be.
I think, Sita, you have pretty much covered it. What I can add is that, remember one thing, that as Brahman and Sita mentioned, as a principle, it binds everything, not just humans, but all life on earth, all animate, inanimate, is a binding force. It binds everything. So I think sometimes you have to be careful that if you said principle bringing down in human form, we can limit it. While it's all well and good for worship or relate to somebody, a supreme being in a human form, but ultimately it has to be in a principle form. And that's, I think we should keep that in mind. Yeah. Next, Bhai.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Vijay Bhai. So, Vijay Bhai, when we come to try to put this spiritual humanism in practice, sometimes, we are going in a train and someone come with a cup saying, "Please help me." And if I pull out, put my hand in pocket and put some money in there, that's me done. But sometimes my mind is thinking, and I think, maybe they are just doing it as like a job, and this is their job to beg, and this is how they are making a living, and they shouldn't be doing that. And so, as a spiritual humanist, should you be thinking like that, or should you just try to help anyone who comes across and just be, helpful? What is your take on it?
Actually, that is the thing that I wouldn't say fear, but I don't like. And that's the reason why I don't necessarily hand out money. What I tend to do is, if I can possibly, is to buy and provide, like, use money to buy food or whatever and to give it to them instead of giving them money. I don't know what they're going to use it for. It's not that I don't trust them, it's that sometimes, obviously, when they have an addiction to something, they can't help but do that. I've heard stories where people give these homeless people like a lot of money and then they end up buying a lot of drugs, and then that's it, if you get my drift. And I mean, it's because either one, they just want to put an end to their suffering, or two, they just really go out of control. And the thing is, so I think I'm wondering if I can guess what the answer would be. I think one of the answer probably is like, do your good deed and don't worry about what happens with the money that you give them. Let them handle that. That's their choice. Your good deed is to give them money if that's what you wanted to do, and then don't worry about whatever happens with that money. Probably that might be one of the answers. I would think. Don't worry about it, because then you're worrying about, at that point you might as well not have given the money in the first place. But yeah, I'd rather, if I were to ever help the homeless, which I've only provided food and try to buy food, I don't give money. Prefer to give them a house so they can start working. But again, I've heard stories in California where there's a big homeless problem over there. They build houses to provide them homes so that they can get their life on the road, but they choose to be homeless. I think because there's such a big social net in California that they choose to be homeless because they get money, they get cell phones. I mean, mind you, it's not fancy cell phones, I don't think. I think they provide cell phones because, if they can get a job, they have a number to call and say, hey, I need you to come into work and whatnot. And I think that's a great thing, because if there's no way to communicate with you from a job point of view, they can't really hire you. Like, say, hey, I need you to come in, because they don't have a number to call. And another thing is the fact that you need a residency. They need to have an address to mail the check, or to see that you have a place that you're staying. And that's the reason why they build houses. But I think there's such a big safety net that they provide money to homeless people. There's free food in a lot of places that have like homeless shelter, food shelter, I guess what we call it, like where they give free food to people who are homeless, and they're kind of incentivizing it a little bit, and it kind of sucks that these people take advantage of that, but at the same time they kind of allow it to happen. So I can't exactly blame either one, but at the same time they're both to blame.
It's very challenging, because as a spiritual human, if you're really a spiritual person, you will feel immediately something for it, and you feel like giving money. I mean, quite often I know that we have to follow what advice you get from the government. Quite a few of these are actually begging gangs. They've been forced into begging by gangs to actually collect money on their behalf, and they become very rich in this process. And the person who's begging actually gets nothing. He just gets a little piece of bread or something. And sometimes I've just bought a sandwich and given it. But it's a good thought that you feel that you have to give. And sometimes even I know that actually this money is going to be used by someone's going to take it away, I just can't help when you just give. But I think we should try and follow the advice you get from people who know better, like the people who do the social services. They understand this concept much better. And I think we should try and follow the advice. And as painful as it looks, because ultimately the right thing to do is perhaps not to give and ask them to go to a feeding center or something. Yeah. But yeah, if you don't feel anything, then it's not a nice thing. That means you're not really working on the spiritual aspects, right? So it's always good to feel something and feel that pain. But the solution is perhaps not giving the money and throwing money in there, because that might even create more problems. But this is a challenge I think we all have in our minds. Anybody who feels for other fellow human beings, we always have this challenge. So it's not something that we can get away from that easily. Sita, Ben?
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, when I do see people like that on the street, I feel horrible. I feel terrible. But I also think that, by giving them money like that, you're kind of keeping them on the street. It's much, my opinion anyways, to give to an organized charity like Shelter or whoever does work for the homeless or the needy, because they know how to funnel the funds into the right place, because you're kind of encouraging them to stay there in a way, maybe. And as Vijay Bhai said, there are all sorts of scams out there where, people are sort of pushing the vulnerable to go and get money for them, and you don't know where that money is going. So at least if it goes to an organised charity, they can do something about it in the right sort of more constructive way, get that person off the street rather than encouraging them to stay on the street. And although, we say spiritual humanism and, we have to care for everything and everyone, we also have to remember that we're living in a material world as well, and there are people out there who will try and scam you and cheat you, and because we're all spirit doesn't mean everyone is pure and pristine. I mean, we all are essentially, but there are people out there who will try and scam you, so you have to also be careful and remember that you are spirit too, so don't let yourself be taken advantage of.
Also, and that's the reason why I don't give money. I don't put myself in that position. I don't usually carry too much money on me anyway. Every place I go to accept credit cards, so it's fantastic. So I don't put myself in that position. I try not to. I don't mind. Like I don't want to brag or anything, but I'll give an example of the one time that I did. Me and my friend, we went to Taco Bell. It's a eatery, fake Mexican. It's American Mexican style food. It's not genuine Mexican. To some degree it is. But anyways, I just remember seeing a guy that looked kind of homeless, and I ended up asking, I guess, the cashier, it's like, is that guy homeless? I don't know if he knows for sure. I don't know if he regularly comes up there and gets a drink or whatever. But anyways, I just said, hey, I'll order a meal and give it to him if you don't mind. So I ordered a meal, and I grabbed ours. We went to my car. I stood there for a little bit just to make sure, hopefully, that the guy got it, and it looked like he did. And after that, I just drove away. I mean, I don't give money out. A charitable organization, absolutely. Even then, sometimes you have to be careful with them. There are some. It's a little bit more difficult for them to be like scams, because there are some reliable ones, and then even then sometimes, like I think in America, like some organizations, like I hear this, I don't know how true it is, like 98% of the donations goes to a lot of administrative work, like paying for a lot of back end stuff, just because there's a lot of legal stuff and there's a lot of people working there. And I don't think 98% is like the right amount, but it could be. I've heard that. I don't know where, but it's just I can see how some of it has to go to people that works there. You know, they can't exactly work for free, but you know, that's another sucky thing, I guess, about organizations.
That is wonderful to hear. Very practical advice there, Sita Ben, and thanks for that. We got a comment from Trustar Patel saying harmonious and uniting idea, which is very relevant for the globalized digital economy we are living in. Please share more knowledge on spiritual humanism. Thank you, Trustar. We'll continue to work on that. We got a question from Dhanalashmi Gangadharan. She's asking, please explain the difference between Kashmir Seivism and South Saiva Siddhanta. Are they two different things, Vijay Bhai?
Actually, this is a very big topic. Yeah, it can take months and months to go through. But in short, Kashmir Seivism is very special in the sense that it's based on the idea of knowledge. The idea of Gnan and, knowledge of, of things, the knowledge of the spirit. So their Seivism is based on the idea of how do you achieve moksha through Gnan. That's why you notice in Kashmir, they're not this vast, elaborate temples, rituals in Kashmir Seivism. It's far, far more debates, and what is Tattva, what is Moksha, what is Atman, why are we here? That's been the root of this Kashmir Seivism. And that's why where South India, I think, is more devotional, more ritualistic. But nevertheless, ultimately they have the same goal anyways. The approaches are different. But if you go deep, then it's a huge, you go a huge, kind of a gauntlet of ideas come through. But by and large, I think in the basic terms, I would say that Kashmir Seivism is the idea of knowledge, Gnan. Mind you, I was wondering, initially in Kashmir, when it's really cold in winter and dark, what do they do? Because they'll be freezing trying to do all these havans and whatever. So I guess they're thinking in the room, by the fire, giving deep thoughts on who we are and what is this idea of Shiva as Gnan and all that. So I think the roots are different, geography is different, so they have different ideas and different thoughts. But by and large, Shiva is so special, as Sita has mentioned a while back. It's so versatile and so diverse. Shiva in so many different ways. This is how it comes up in a different kind of idea. Ultimately, that can be the same. Yeah. Now, Sita?
Yeah, I think you've got more knowledge on that, so I'll leave it there, but thank you.
I'll say I have no idea what Kashmir, I believe. It almost sounds like it's a practice, but at the same time a place, maybe even a group of people.
Sure. Matrix is asking, can you please provide some source to understand Brahman? I guess the Upanishads will be the best place to go. And you can find, if you go for Ramakrishna Mission website, you may be able to find online versions of Upanishads as well. They got many different Swamis given different translations and explanation of Upanishads. So that is a good place to start. Also, you could look up into Swami Sarvapriyananda's lecture on this topic as well. He's got some wonderful topics, so you could explore more material there, I believe. Anything to add on that, Sitaben?
Yeah, I think also Swami Vivekananda's lecture, The Absolute and the Manifestation, is beautiful. You should definitely have a look at that. It's more inspiring. Did you guys
No, I agree with Sita. That lecture is one of the best. It actually opened my eyes on how the absolute can become the manifest. It's fantastic lecture. Please read that lecture. That's all I can add to that.
Wonderful. Judge for YouTube has asked if everyone achieves moksha, what will happen? Will there be another level of evolution beyond humans? Vijay Bhai.
Tough question. I mean, if everybody achieves moksha, then you wonder, will this universe exist as a term? But having said that, there's a difference in approach between the Dvaita and Advaita traditions. By and large, the Dvaita traditions say that if you look at the Ramanuja or Madhava, they say that at the time of Pralaya, means the time of the world when it goes inwards, basically. The world kind of stops. The universe is not now going to crunch and disappear. All the souls which are in a particular state of progress in karmas, they'll be stuck there. The ones in moksha will be there. But by and large, they believe that even somebody who achieves moksha will try and come again to get a chance to serve God. So there is a cycle. In the Advaita case, the idea is that it's a much more principle based, that quite often you forget for whatever reason that who you truly are. Again, you just find you truly are, then you in that state. But if that's a continuously and everybody achieves that state, then I guess we are all free. I don't know what happens in that state. It's something even I've thought of. Sita, can you add on that? I'm not.
Yeah, no.
That word.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think once somebody has achieved enlightenment, then they may choose not to be reborn again, and that's the end of the cycle for that particular soul. But as Vijay Bhai said, there are very special beings out there who decide to take on their limited human frame again and come back down to earth and serve humanity and become prophets for humanity and help to guide the rest of us on that journey. But I guess it's a sort of ever-evolving cycle. So there are lots of people who sort of become enlightened silently. The amazing thing is we know that there are people out there, but they don't make a big song and dance about it. They might be your next door neighbor and they might have just sort of become enlightened and that's the end of the journey for them, and they silently disappear into that. But there are other people who are the saints and the prophets that we all know of, who sort of want to spread what they have understood about the spirit and help to guide the rest of us. But in terms of the other end of the cycle, there are millions and millions of living organisms who are ready to evolve and become part of the human kingdom, and that's probably why there is a ballooning human population now, because there are so many of us which haven't become enlightened and we keep coming back over and over again, and then all of the sort of living souls from the animal kingdom, plant kingdom coming into the human kingdom and becoming human over and over again. So maybe that's why there is a ballooning human population now. So it's just a never-ending cycle of life, really.
Wonderful answer, Sita Ben.
Oh, I wanted to cut it out pretty quick there. Alright, so, I guess I said all I really wanted to say about this video. Very interesting, a little bit of a different take, especially about Brahman, what they talked about, and again about Kashmir. I'm not too sure about that. Again, like I said, it sounds like three things that they said: the people, a practice, and a place. I got all three of those from when they spoke about it, and I have no idea. I think I've heard of a place, but then again, I don't know if they're talking about the place. It seems like it's a type of path, but then again, it seemed like they talked about a place because they talked about that, then they talked about South India being a bit more religious. So I'm assuming that's the reason why I thought it's a place. It seems like more north of India. or North India? Anyways, let me know in the comments below. Anyways, that's my reaction to Should Humanism Expand to Cover Spiritualism? Hindu Academy. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.